Hello and welcome. I'm David Widmar, co-founder and managing partner of Agricultural Economic Insights, home of the 2022 Ag Forecast Challenge. Of course, that is the 16 questions, $1,600 grand prize. Starting April 15th, we're going to be asking questions about the corn and soybean yield estimates that the USDA puts out at the various WASDE reports throughout the growing season. Each report will resolve 2 questions and we'll add 2 new questions. And so get ready here April 15th. The first 4 questions will be posted and you can follow along throughout the growing season. There'll be monthly prizes for the first half and the last half of questions scored, and then the overall grand prize, $1,600 in cash. I'm going to talk about 2 good strategies for getting started and 2 maybe not so good strategies for getting started. I'm going to start with the not so good strategies. You can use all of these. If you want to use all of these, you can use none of these, but I want to talk about this and how it impacts your potential score along the way. So let's take a look. This is a question we had open in 2021. It's about the probability of above trend yields for the U.S. corn crop. 179 is what we estimated to be the trend line yield. And the dotted line here is the consensus. The green line is my forecast. There are 2 individual scores that you receive with each question once the question gets resolved. The first one is the participation. That simply states for all the days that this question was open, how long were you actively forecasting? And so as soon as you log that first forecast, you are going to be accumulating those participation points. The second one here is the percentile rank. This tells you how well did you do relative to everybody else in the contest. This is kind of like ranking everybody in the Olympics. So I was in the 7th percentile, which means 93% of other AFN users scored better than I did. So this is oftentimes a humbling scoring process for myself personally, but I enjoy the ability to learn along the way. Now, how do you earn points? Well, you take the participation times the percentile rank. So for each question, there's a maximum of 10,000 possible points. Now, as you can see here, if you did really low on the percentile rank, it's going to really knock you out. And that's where we want to talk about for the first strategy you should use with caution. And we call it the go big or go home. It's perfected by one of our users out of Nebraska. And what they do is as soon as a question comes out, they typically look at it and say, do I think this is going to happen? Yes or no. If it's a yes, they log 100% probability. If it's a low, they log a 0% probability. Now, as a purist of possible outcomes, we all know that there's not very many things in life that are 100% guaranteed. So 100% or a 0% is a very, maybe not a good way of thinking about risks or potential outcomes, but it could be a way to do really well in the point system. Now, keep in mind, this challenge has 16 questions. So to do well with that particular strategy, you're going to have to get most of those questions right every time. So another way of thinking about this is if you think it's 100% probability of above trend yields here in 2022, you're going to log 100%. Now, a lot can happen between now and November. And if you sort of stick with that forecast the whole time and you get a low percentile rank, as I did here, you're going to have a big 0 or a 1, and that's going to really impact that multiple times the participation. So in this case, I would have scored less than 700 points out of a 10,000 point question possibility. So this go big or go home strategy, this is how your score is going to get potentially adversely impacted. Very low ranking times whatever the participation is going to hold you back. Now, the other strategy that's you should avoid is almost the opposite. What they're going to do is they're going to wait maybe till September or October, and we call this strategy the front run. You're going to wait as long as you can until you get some information or you see where the consensus is heading. Maybe you're going to, on the month-to-month questions, for example, maybe you're going to wait till the private estimates come out and you're going to wait until you can see the consensus itself right before the forecast. And a day or 2 before it gets resolved, you're going to put in a big score to try to get out here. So you want to avoid maybe bad forecasts early on. Well, that could help your percentile rank. But keep in mind, you're going to be forecasting against a bunch of other people. So if you're going to be waiting down here, look at where all the other forecasts are going to be at. So you're going to come out here and try to front run, but you're going to front run the crowd that's already trending that direction. Where your score is going to get hurt is its participation. So if you wait until halfway through the contest or the questions gets resolved, or a third of the way through the question gets resolved, your participation score is going to suffer. So again, I only got 600 points out of there. So if you would have flipped these and maybe you got a 99th percentile rank and 7% participation, it's going to impact your score as well. 2 strategies that you might want to consider. These are very helpful if you don't know where to start. What we have found is the first forecast is the most difficult. And then from there, it's easier to fine tune your expectations as new information becomes available. But for a lot of us, it's very intimidating to make that first forecast. So what can you do? How can you overcome that? Step 1, strategy 1 is to just log 50%. Go in with that mindset of no matter what the question is, I'm going to log 50% and I will dial it in later that day or later next week, but start with it 50%. Why is 50% a good starting point? Because it's maximum uncertainty. You're kind of saying a coin flip. It could go one way or the other. This is a way to start your precipitation points counting. So you're going to get a good participation score there. Again, the second piece here is going to be a starting point. You can dial in your expectations in the coming days or weeks, but 50% is a kind of a good default for individuals to use. The second strategy we would encourage you to consider is to follow the consensus. So maybe you get in there, you log a forecast and you think, man, the consensus is a lot different. I don't know how to start here. You can move that forecast to the consensus and just follow the consensus for a little bit. And then maybe you start to deviate as you think the consensus isn't updating, or maybe you have different expectations than what the crowd or the group is starting to think. So to wrap this up, I encourage you all to get ready for the Forecast Network Challenge around corn and soybean yields. Starts April 15th with the first 4 questions. You can join at any point and still be eligible for the prizes that remain. But 4 strategies talked about today. The 2 to avoid or the 2 to be careful with is front running and go big or go home. The 2 strategies that help you get started, help you to get off top dead center, so to speak, is logging a 50% forecast initially and then dialing in from there. And the second strategy is to shadow the consensus initially to allow you to sort of get your feet wet and then deviate as you get more comfortable in the coming weeks and months. Again, I'm David Widmar. Thanks so much for checking in today. April 15th, the contest starts. Look forward to seeing your forecast and your comments in the coming weeks to come. But in the meantime, stay curious.